Good morning. I wanted to make you all aware we're going to be reading a chapter a day on what on earth am I here for together every day. Excuse me. That reading won't start if you get the book. We'll be reading that together, and I would highly encourage you to do that. And we'll be starting that reading on the 17th. No, the 16th, a week from tomorrow. That's the 16th, right? 16th. So you don't have to read next Sunday morning before you come in, but on Monday, we'll be reading together, and we'll kind of do a devotion together. I'll put that up online. You can follow along with me, or you can get back to it later in the day. Whatever is better for you. You know, sometimes Jennifer, when I'm cooking dinner, she gets a little upset with me because she says that I don't know how to season my food, but it's okay because I take it with a grain of sugar. No? See, when I started learning math, I thought that fractions were easier than decimals, but I guess I was just missing the point. Thanks, Joe. It's a time of year, I don't know how to transition from that, it's bad. It's a time of year when Jennifer and I get to think a lot about her mom. And I think back to the Thanksgiving before she passed away, and she was sitting at her table, and she was bringing out checks, and she was writing bills and paying bills with a check, and she was putting them into an envelope, and she put stamps on them. And I believe Josiah was sitting there, and he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm paying bills." And he said, "Well, why don't you just do that online, like just click and pay and do all that good stuff?" And he had never seen anybody do that before because, we were at the point in our lives, we just paid everything online. That's what you do, right? For a long time, the only check that I ever wrote was when I paid my tithe. I didn't need a check for anything else, and now I don't even need one for that anymore. We can just pay that online. But the thing is he had got to this place where the only thing that he knew was so different than what the life that she had lived. Like now, when I go on a road trip, my kids have electronic devices that they can watch, and you can think about that, what you want, but they have devices that they can watch, and they're like happy the whole way. And when their devices die, it's like someone has killed them. And then you have to start teaching them about punch buggy, right? And then that just causes more fights. And then you've got to teach them how to play license plate bingo, and they don't have paper in the car because they have an electronic device that's supposed to work, that's supposed to suit them. And they look back on the way that you and I used to live, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how did you ever do that?" And they look back on the life that we lived and the things that we did, and they don't understand, and sometimes they look down on it. Because the way of the life that they know is so much different. It doesn't seem as fulfilling. It's something new. And what we're going to see this morning from our scripture is that Jesus was giving the people the same situation. People that had a way that they were supposed to relate, a way that they were supposed to live. They had a means of religion. And Jesus was coming in, and he was showing them a whole new way. A lot of people didn't like it. So if you'll follow along with me in Matthew chapter 9, I'm going to start reading verse 14. It says this: "Then the disciples of John came to him saying, 'Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?' And Jesus said to them, 'Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins. And so both are preserved.'" And we get this and we glance over it so often. But the thing that we don't understand is to their society, they didn't really handle different very well. This is what theologian Ben Wethington said. He said, "In a culture that believed that the old was the true and the reliable, that new things, new teaching, and new behavior had to be justified in one way or another. We've been there, right? We hold on to what we think is best. We hold on to what we think is the right way. And we push out something that's right because it's just not the same. And what we're looking at here is that these are the disciples of John, which is John the Baptist, who were these reformists of their time. They were trying to give a new way of life. They wanted to set their people up. They wanted people to see a new way, not live the old way, not live by the old covenant and the old rules, and they were trying to do something different. But they were very much holding on to the old law. They were very much holding on to the old law. And here's the thing. You and I do the same thing when it comes to Jesus. We don't just accept his teaching as it is. We try to create our own apart from what he has taught us. And what you need to know is that you're not the creator. Any rules that you could come up with, any ideas, any methodologies that you think that you could come up with would be nowhere close to the glory and the greatness that Jesus created. So what we try to do is we try to create our own religion apart from what he has taught us. And here's one of the ways we do that. What we like to do is we like to take a little bit of our old life and just add Jesus. We like to take a little bit of the old life we have and just throw this Jesus idea onto it. We just keep living our old lives. We don't truly hold on to what he's called us to because we're not so sure that his way of life is best. But when we do, when we do this, when we hold on to this old way of thinking, this old person, and we try to add a little bit of Jesus, it's kind of like the wineskins. And it says this in verse 16. It says, "No one puts an unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made." Can I just say that it took me a long time before I ever understood what this meant? Like, I didn't get it. I just read it and I said, oh, well, that makes sense. But I don't know about you, but sometimes when I wash my clothes, they shrink. I mean, it has nothing to do with the food that I eat, but if I put clothes and I wash them and I dry them, they always shrink. And what happens is they just start to shrink up, and those clothes are always shrunk. And I had this shirt one time that Jennifer told me that I needed to throw away. I think there's a picture of it. I mean, it's got some holes in it, right? But my thoughts were it was a 5-year-old shirt, and it was comfortable, and it was soft. And this was a picture I put on Facebook because she told me I needed to throw it away, and I wanted people's opinions. And I left for work one day, and I came home, and it was gone. But that's a different story. But let's say that I took that shirt, put that back up there for a second. I took this shirt, this old shirt that I've washed probably 500 times. It's already been shrunk, and I go out and I buy a new shirt, and I cut off pieces to try to patch into all these holes. I start sewing it up, and then I wash it, and I throw it into the dryer. What's going to happen is the shirt is already shrunk. It's not going to shrink anymore. But those new pieces that I bought, man, they're going to shrink. And it's going to take this little hole, and it's going to rip it out because that piece is going to be smaller than what you really intended. And all of a sudden, that hole is going to be twice the size because now you've got rips around the edges, and it's going to look worse. And this is what happens in our lives when we try to hang on to our old life and just add a little bit of Jesus. This is what happens in our lives when we try to keep living the same life that we did. You can take that away. When we try to keep living the same life that we did, always have, and just say Jesus and add a little bit here and a little bit there, what happens is it tears at the fabric of us and it tears at the fabric of Christianity. So what if this looks like is we call ourselves Christians, but there is absolutely zero evidence of life change. We talked about this last week. I told you that when you come to know Jesus, your life changes. When you come into a real relationship with Jesus, something happens and you don't live the same way anymore. So if we call ourselves Christians and there's no life change, what this could mean is like we're still the same old shady businessman we've always been. We still deal with people the same way. They come in, we talk to them about everything that we've done. Yeah, I'm a Christian, but we still lie to make a little bit more, and it's not really a lie. My family's got to eat. But people know that. Or maybe we call ourselves a Christian, but we still gossip about everything that has ever happened around us. Now, I know we don't gossip. We just tell the truth about other people who aren't in the room that have nothing to do with us. It's not gossip. I'm just telling you what happened to somebody else that I wasn't involved in. And people see that. And it starts to tear at the fabric of who you say you are. Or we say that we're a Christian, but we hate people that aren't exactly like us. They don't believe the same thing that we do. They don't listen to the same music that we do. They don't react in the same way that we do. They don't look the same as we do. But we still say that we're Christians, but what's happening is we're living this old life with these preconceived ideas about people, about how they are, and we're not loving them the way that Jesus told us to. Slowly and surely it starts to rip. Or we still freak out when things don't go as we expected them to. We have this little Jesus patch where we've got the holes and we're trying to bring this Jesus and patch the little holes. We're not trying to take something brand new. And what happens is the world on the outside looks at what you're saying and how you're living, and they say, hypocrite. They may never even come in the doors of the church, but you've just told them the things that you believe and the way that you act are two different things. And they say, hypocrite. And it doesn't only hurt us, but it hurts Christianity as a whole. And what we have to realize is we can't create this new religion. We can't decide, hey, we're going to take a little bit of what Jesus said and live my old life. That's not how it works. We take everything that he has to offer, and that's how we get through. So one way this happens is we take a little bit of our old life and try to add Jesus, or what we do is we take a little bit of the old rules and add a little bit of Jesus. Look at verses 14 and 15. It says this, then the disciples of John came to him saying, why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? And Jesus said to them, can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away, and then they will fast. And this is great. See, the Pharisees in Jesus' day, what they would do is they would fast twice a week. They would fast at least twice a week. And what the idea was, it was an act of worship. It was a way that they would worship God, because what they were doing is they were lowering themselves down. And it was trying to show people how much they had to depend on God. I don't have any food, so God has to take care of me. And he said, they've got to do this thing. So they did it twice a week. It was a physical way that they could worship him. So they set it up. But what happens is they found a way to just check it off the list. It didn't mean anything anymore. It was no longer an act of worship. It was an act of pride. It was an act saying, hey, look at what I can do. And they're here. And if you've ever been a fasting person and you went someplace where people were feasting, man, it could be miserable. So they come in and these people are feasting and they're having an issue with it. But these Pharisees had found a way to set this up as just a ritual. Something that they could check off the list, a way to worship God without really worshiping, just something that they could do. And I've told you before, worshiping God is some of my favorite parts of the service. To sing my heart out and to worship him and to pour everything that I have in honor of everything that he's done for me. But if I only did that on Sundays, and I didn't find time to do it the rest of the week, I'm just like the Pharisees that he's talking about here. We say, well, I don't have time to worship. You have time in your car if you drive to work. You've got time in your car to worship Jesus. You have time if you make time. You have time for the things that you love. Let's think about this here. They're at this wedding feast. And they're there, and everyone is going to just be partying, and they're happy because people just got married, and they're not going to stop doing anything. Everything is fair game when they're celebrating. Yes, we're not going to put anything aside. Let's talk about feasting, and let's talk about ritualistic ways and ideas of a marriage. So let's say every week we decided that on Monday evenings, you and your spouse, we're going to talk about the day. Tuesday, that's intimacy night. Wednesday, it's get your kid to church, well, for some of us. Thursday, it's intimacy night. That's twice. Don't get too excited. Friday night, talk about the week again, right? So that's on Friday night, we come in, and Jennifer's like, oh, let's talk about the week, and she starts talking. Well, today the kids did this, And then they learned about this, Yeah. And you could just roll through that. It's boring. There's no intimacy there. There's no real intimacy there. What you've done is you've set up a ritual in your marriage. There's no real love there. It's just become second nature. And that's what happens is we start to drive a wedge and it starts to grow apart. And all of a sudden we need some real heart attention. None of us would think that's a good idea. But for some reason, when it comes to the creator of everything, it's exactly how we like to do it. Hey, I'll give you Sunday morning for an hour and 15 minutes when he's being good. Sunday nights, I might set some time aside. I might go to small group. Wednesday, I might try to get my kids to church. And that's it. We might put aside 4 or 5 hours a week and not even really be into it. Just doing it because we're supposed to. If we look at our spouse that way, oh, I'm just putting in the time, you would see the disconnect in that relationship. And most of us would do whatever it takes to build that back together. But for some reason, Jesus is not that important. Let's hold on to the old way. Let's hold on to that old covenant. We can just do things on Sunday. That's all it takes. I'll just go in on Sunday. I'll sit there. I'll listen to him talk. And if he's really good, he'll be done by 11:30. It'll be great. We can go to Cracker Barrel. We can eat. It's going to be glorious. Sunday night, I've got some time set aside. Maybe I'll go to small group this week. It'll be great. But then there's nothing else. And we just think that that's supposed to be good enough. No quiet time during the week. No time spent in prayer. And we just hope that we can get to know his heart in these few moments. And look at, this is what he's talking about in Matthew 9:17. It says this: neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins. So both are preserved. So both are preserved. See, what would happen was old wineskin would start to dry out. When you're fermenting wine, it gives off this gas. And if you were to put new wine into an old wineskin, as that starts to give off gas, what would happen is that gas would cause the old wineskin to explode. And then both are gone. The old, the new, they're worth nothing. What he's saying is you got to have the new to put something into. What he's telling us is that you can't hold on to the old. You can't just go through life and hope that the way the Pharisees did it, the way the old covenant told us that all you have to do is do some rituals and it's over. It doesn't work. It's about a relationship with the creator of the universe. And it would have not been weird in this first century if the worship team would come. It would not have been weird in the first century to see as this movement of Jesus started. This movement of Jesus that started in the synagogues, they started to slowly move away. Because what they realized is the old and the new didn't go together. The way that they used to do it, and the way that Jesus had called them to live, they were not the same. So they had to move into what was new. Here's what I want you to know this morning. If you'll stand with me. Whatever it is that you're trying to create, by holding on to your old life and adding a little bit of Jesus, or trying to hold on to the old covenant and these old rules and these old rituals and just trying to make it through, it's not worth very much. Today is the day for you to walk hand in hand with Jesus in the life that he's called you to, and the life that he wants you to live, and to put away all those old relationships that were ritualistic, that say, I can just come when I need to and put it all behind me and everything will be good and everything will be great, and it won't be. It takes so much more. It takes you giving him everything that you have. That's a scary thing. But the moment we say yes to Jesus is the moment that we die to ourselves. For some of us, we've been trying to live a little bit of ourselves and a little bit of Jesus for far too long. This morning, I'm asking you to lay the old you down. To lay the old way down. And run after him and what he's called you to do with everything that is in you. Will you pray with me this morning? Father, we thank you. Jesus, this morning, I know that there's some of us here, and we've just been putting in the time. This whole thing that we're doing this morning, it's not because we love you and we want to be around you. It's because we just think we're supposed to. And that's not what you want. Father, I pray that this morning, that those of us that are here with that idea, that you would just touch our hearts this morning, that you would help us to realize that you want more than just something that we can check off the list. That you want more than some ritual, that you want every part of us. Jesus, I pray that this morning, that as we're standing here and we're feeling the weight of that upon us, Lord, that I pray that you would help us this morning to declare to you that it's all yours. Father, I pray that for those of us struggling, that you'd help us to integrate ourselves into a small group of believers that could help lift us up and help us push us to the other side and help us to be who you have created us to be. Jesus, we love you. We thank you. It's in your mighty name we pray. Amen. Come as the Lord leads you this morning.